What's going on, y'all? Welcome back to another episode of Dave Reads Harry Potter. This was a stone. We'll be reading chapters 11, which is Quidditch. And we'll be reading chapter 12, which is also titled The Mirror of Erised. Well, without further ado, let's get this show on the road. Now, it sucks that you can't find your own video. Sad. I'm trying to pull it up so I can watch it. But I can't. Yeah, well. Anyways, just a quick recap of what happened last time. You had the Midnight Duel, and you also had Halloween. First part was where Malfoy tried to get Harry expelled by having him out of bed in the halls after hours. And he told Filch, I believe. I'm pretty sure he told Filch. And then Halloween is when Hermione became their friend. They saved her from a troll. Alright, chapter 11, Quidditch. As they entered November, the weather turned very cold. Well, remember, the mountains around the school became icy gray, and the lake chilled steel. What? And the lake chilled steel. Every morning, the ground was covered in frost. Hagrid could be seen from the upstairs windows defrosting broomsticks on the Quidditch field. Bundled up in a long moleskin overcoat, rabbit fur gloves, and enormous beaver skin boots. The Quidditch season had begun. On Saturday, Harry would be playing in his very first match after weeks of training. Gryffindor versus Slytherin. If Gryffindor won, they would move up into second place into the House Championship. Hardly anyone had seen Harry play because Wood had decided that, as their secret weapon, Harry should be kept, well, secret. But the news that he was playing secret had leaked out somehow, and Harry didn't know which was worse. People telling him he'd be brilliant, or people telling him they'd be running around underneath him holding a mattress. It was really lucky that Harry now had Hermione as a friend. He didn't know how he'd gotten through all his homework without her. What with all the last-minute Quidditch practice Wood was making him do, she had also lent him Quidditch Through the Ages, which turned out to be a very interesting read. Harry learned that there were 700 ways of committing a Quidditch foul. Now, all of them happened during a World Cup match in 1473. The Seekers were usually the smallest and fastest players, and that most serious Quidditch accidents seemed to happen to them. That although people rarely died playing Quidditch, referees have been known to vanish, to turn up months later in the Sahara Desert. Hermione had become a bit more relaxed about breaking rules, since Harry and Ron had saved her from the mountain troll, and she was much nicer for it. The day before Harry's first Quidditch match, the three of them were out in the freezing courtyard during break, and she had conjured them up a bright blue fire that could be carried around in a jam jar. They were standing with their backs to it, getting warm, when Snape crossed the yard. Harry noticed at once that Snape was limping. Harry, Ron, and Hermione moved closer together to block the fire from view. They are sure it wouldn't be allowed. Unfortunately, something about that guilty face caught Snape's eye. He limped over. He hadn't seen the fire, but he seemed to be looking for a reason to tell them off anyways. What's left you've got there, Potter? It was Quidditch Through the Ages, Harry shouted. Library books are not to be taken outside of the school, said Snape. Give it to me. 5 points from Gryffindor. Just made that up. Harry muttered angrily as Snape limped away. Wonder what's wrong with his leg. Don't know. I hope it's really hurting him, said Ron bitterly. The Gryffindor common room was very noisy that evening. Harry, Ron, and Hermione sat together next to a window. Hermione was checking Harry and Ron's charms homework for them. She would never let them copy. How will you learn? But by asking her to read it through, they got the right answers anyways. Harry felt restless. He wanted Quidditch to the ages back, to take his mind off the nerves about tomorrow. Why should he be afraid of Snape? Getting up, he told Ron and Hermione he was going to ask Snape if he could have it back. Better you than me, they said together. But Harry had an idea Snape wouldn't refuse if there were other teachers listening. He made his way down staff room and knocked. There was no answer. He knocked again. Nothing. Perhaps Snape had left the book in there? It was worth a try. He pushed the door ajar and peered inside, and a horrible scene met his eyes. Snape and Filch were inside, alone. Snape was holding his robes above his knees. One of his legs were bloody and mangled. Filch was handing Snape bandages. Philosopher, Snape was saying. How are you supposed to keep your eyes on all three heads at once? Harry tried to shut the door quietly, but hey, Holly, good morning. What? Snape's face was twisted with fury as he dropped his robes quickly to hide his legs. Harry gulped. I just wonder if I could have my book back. Get out! Out! Harry left before Snape could take any more points from Gryffindor. He sprinted back upstairs. Did you get it? Ron asked Harry joining him. What's the matter? In a low whisper, Harry told them what he'd seen. You know what this means, he finished restlessly. He tried to get past the three-headed dog at Halloween. That's where he was going when we saw him. He was after whatever's guarding. And I'd bet my broomstick he'd let the troll in to make a diversion. Hermione's eyes were wide. No, he wouldn't, she said. I know he's not very nice, but he wouldn't try and steal something Dumbledore's keeping safe. Honestly, Hermione, I think all teachers are saints or something, snapped Ron. I'm with Harry. I wouldn't put anything past Snape. What's he after? What's that dog guarding? Harry went to bed with his head buzzing with the same question. Neville was snoring loudly. But Harry couldn't sleep. He tried to empty his mind. He needed to sleep. He had to. He had his first Quidditch match in a few hours. But the expression on Snape's face when Harry had seen his leg wasn't easy to forget. The next morning dawned very bright and cold. The great hall was full of delicious smell of fried sausages and chest. And man, I hate when words separate out to different pages. Sausages and the cheerful chatter of everyone looking forward to a good Quidditch match. You've got to eat some breakfast. I don't want anything. Just a bit of toast, wheedled Hermione. I'm not hungry. Harry felt terrible. In an hour's time, he'd be walking onto the field. Harry, you need the strength, said Seamus Finnegan. Seekers are always the one who get clobbered by the other team. Thanks, Seamus, said Harry, watching Seamus pile ketchup on his sausages. Yeah, okay, I like ketchup. Who the hell eats ketchup on sausages? No, thank you. And eggs, for that matter. Ooh, so disgusting. I tried it. No, not that great. By 11 o'clock, the whole school, right? By 11 o'clock, the whole school seemed to be out in the stands around the Quidditch pitch. Many students have binoculars. The seats might be raised high, as in the air, but it's still difficult to see what's going on sometimes. Ron and Hermione joined Neville, Seamus, and Dean, the West Ham fan, up in the top row. As they surprised her Harry, they had painted a large banner on one of the sheets. Scabbers had ruined. It said, "Pops for President," and Dean, who was good at drawing, had gotten a large Gryffindor line underneath. Then Hermione had performed a tricky little charm so that the paint flushed different colors. That's cool. Meanwhile, in the locker room, Harry and the rest of the team were changing to scarlet Quidditch robes. Slytherin will be playing in green. Wood cleared his throat for silence. "Okay, man," he said. "And women," said Chaser Angelina Johnson. "And women," Wood agreed. "This is it. This is the big one," said Fred Weasley. "The one we've all been waiting for," said George. We know a lot of a speech by heart," Fred told Harry. "We were on the team last year." "Shut up, you two. This is the best Team Gryffindor's had in years. We're going to win. I know it." He glared at them all as if to say, "Or else." "Right, this time. Good luck, all of you." Harry followed Fred and George out of the locker room and, hoping his knees weren't going to give way, walked onto the field to loud cheers. Madam Hooch was refereeing. That's a tricky word to say sometimes. She stood in the middle of the field waiting for the two teams, her broom in the hand. "No, I want a nice, fair game. All of you," she said, once they were all gathered around her. Harry noticed that she seemed to be speaking particularly to the Slytherin captain, Marcus Flint, a fifth year. Harry thought Flint looked as if he had some troll blood in him. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw the fluttering banner high above, flashing "Potter for President" over the crowd. His heart skipped. He felt braver. "Mouth Jibberdoons, please." I can't really do Madam Hooch's voice that well. There are some voices I'm going to attempt and some I'm not going to. Madam Hooch gave a loud blast on her silver whistle. 15 brooms rose up high into the air. They're off. And the quaffle was taken immediately by Angelina Johnson of Gryffindor. What an excellent chaser that girl is. And rather attractive, too. Jordan! Sorry, Professor. The Weasley's friend, Lee Jordan, was doing the commentary for the match, closely watched by Professor McGonagall. I love Lee Jordan. They should have had him in the movies much more. And she's really building along up there. A neat pass to Angelina Spinnet. A good find of Oliver Woods last year, only a reserve. Back to Johnson and no, Slytherin taking the quaffle. Slytherin captain Marcus Flint gains the quaffle off. Gains a quaffle, and off he goes. Flint flying like an eagle up there. He's going to no stop by an excellent move by Gryffindor keeper Wood. And the Gryffindor say to quaffle. That's Chaser Katie Bell out of Gryffindor over there. Nice dive around Flint off up the field and ouch! That must have hurt. Hit in the back of the head by a bludger. Quaffle taken by Slytherin. That's Adrian Pewley speeding off toward the goalposts. But he's blocked by a second bludger sent his way by Fred or George Weasley. Can't tell which. Nice play by the Gryffindor beater anyway. And Johnson back in possession of the quaffle. Clear field ahead of her. And off she goes. And she's flying. Dodges a speeding bludger. The goalposts are ahead. Come on now, Angelina. Keeper butchily dives and misses. Gryffindor score! Gryffindor cheers filled the cold air. with howling moans from the Slytherins. Budge up there! Move it along! Hagrid! Ron and Hermione squeezed together to give Hagrid enough room to join them. Space to join them. Been watching from me hut, said Hagrid, petting a large pair of binoculars from around his neck. But it isn't the same as being in the crowd. No sign of snitch yet, eh? Nope. Hetty hasn't had much to do yet. Kept out of trouble, though, that's something, said Hagrid, raising his binoculars and peering skyward at the speck that was Harry. Ooh, everybody left. Anyway. This was the part of his and Wood's game plan. Way up above them, Harry was gliding over the game, squinting about for some sign of snitch. This was part of his and Wood's game plan. Keep out of the way until you catch sight of the snitch. We don't want you attacked before you have to be. When Angeline had scored, Harry had done a couple of loop-de-loops to let off his feelings. Now he was back to staring around for a snitch. Once he caught sight of the flash of gold, but it was just a reflection from one of Weasley's wristwatches. And once a bludgeon decided to come pelting his way, more like a cannonball than anything, but Harry dodged and Fred and George Weasley came chasing after it. All right there, Harry! He had time to yell as he beat the bludgeon furiously toward Marcus Flint. Slytherin in possession, Lee Jordan was saying. Chaser Pewee ducks 2 bludgers, 2 Weasleys, and Chaser Bell. And Speed sort of wait a minute, was that the snitch? A murmur ran through the crowd as Adrian Pewee dropped the clawful, too busy looking over his shoulder at the flash of gold that had passed his left ear. Harry saw it. In a great rush of excitement, he dived downward after the streak of gold. Slytherin seeker Terrence Higgs had seen it too. Neck and neck they hurtled toward the snitch. All the chasers seemed to have forgotten what they were supposed to be doing as they hung in midair to watch. Harry was faster than Higgs. He could see the little round ball, wings fluttering, darting up ahead. He put on an extra spurt of speed. Wham! A roar of rage echoed from the Gryffindors below. Marcus Flint had blocked Harry on purpose, and Harry's broom spun off, of course. Harry holding on for dear life. Foul! Screamed the Gryffindors. Madam Hooch spoke angrily to Flint and then ordered a free shot at the goalpost for the Gryffindors. But in all the confusion, of course, the golden snitch had disappeared from sight again. Down in the stands, Dean Thomas was yelling, Send him off, red card! What are you talking about, Dean? Red card, said Dean fiercely. In soccer, you get shown the red card and you're out of the game. But this isn't soccer, Dean, Ron reminded him. Hagrid, however, was on Dean's side. They ought to change the rules. Flint could have knocked Harry out of the air. So, after that obvious and disgusting bit of cheating, Jordan, grabbed Professor McGonagall. After an open, revolting foul. Jordan, I'm warning you. All right. Flint nearly kills the Gryffindor Seeker, which could happen to anyone, I'm sure. So a penalty to Gryffindor, taken by Spinnet, who puts it away, no trouble. And we continue to play. Gryffindor still in possession. It was as Harry dodged another bludger, which went spinning dangerously past his head, that happened. His broom gave a sudden frightening lurch. For a split second, he thought he was going to fall. He gripped the broom tightly with both of his hands and knees. He'd never felt anything like that. It happened again. It was as though the broom was trying to buck him off. But no, I said buck, not the other word. Buck. B-U-C-K. Like throw him off. For a split second, he thought he was going to fall. He gripped his broom tightly with his hands and knees. He never felt anything like that. It happened again. Oh yeah, it was as though the broom was trying to buck him off. I think I skipped a line by accident earlier. But the Nimbus 2000s did not suddenly decide to buck their riders off. Harry tried to turn back toward the Gryffindor goalposts. He had half a mind to ask Wood to call a timeout. Then he realized that his broom was completely out of control. He couldn't turn it. He couldn't direct it at all. It was zigzagging through the air, and every now and then, making violent swooshing movements that almost unseated him. Lee was still commenting. Slither in possession, Flint with a quaffle, passes Bennett, passes Bell, hit hard in the face by a bludger, hope it broke his nose. Oh, you're joking, Professor. Slytherin score. Oh no! The Slytherins were cheering. No one seemed to have noticed that Harry's broom was behaving strangely. It was carrying him down slower, away from the game, jerking and twitching as it went. Don't know what Harry thinks he's doing, Harry mumbled. He stared through his binoculars. If I didn't know better, I'd say Harry lost control of his broom. But he can't have. People, shout to the team, sound like people were pointing up at Harry all over the stands. What's so funny, Amber? His broom has started to roll over and over, with him only just managing to hold on. Then the whole crowd gasped. Harry's broom had given a wild jerk, and Harry swung off it. He was now dangling from it, holding on with only one hand. Did something happen to it when Flint blocked him? Seamus whispered. Can't have, Hagrid said, his voice shaking. Can't nothing interfere with a broomstick except powerful dark magic. No kid could do that to a Nimbus 2000. At these words, Hermione seized Hagrid's glass binoculars. Instead of looking up at Harry, she started looking frantically at the crowd. What are you doing? Moaned Ron, gray-faced. I knew it, Hermione gasped. Snape, look! Ron grabbed. Ron grabbed the binoculars. Snape was in the middle of stands opposite them. He had his eyes fixed on Harry and was muttering non-stop under his breath. He's doing something. Jinxing the broom, said Hermione. What should we do? Leave it to me. Before Ron could say another word, Hermione had disappeared. Ron turned his binoculars back on Harry. His broom was vibrating so hard, it was almost impossible for him to hang on much longer. The whole crowd was on its feet, watching, terrified, as the Weasleys flew up to try and pull Harry safely onto one of their brooms, but it was no good. Every time they got near him, the broom would jump higher still. They dropped lower and circled beneath him, obviously hoping to catch him if he fell. Marcus Flint seized the quaffle and scored 5 times without anyone noticing. Come on, Hermione. Hermione had fought her way across the stand where Snape stood, and was now racing along the row behind him. She didn't even stop to say sorry as she knocked Professor Quirrell head first into the front row in front. Reaching Snape, she crouched down, pulled out her wand, and whispered a few well-chosen words. Damn, I can't remember what they were from the movies. Damn. It took perhaps 30 seconds. Bright blue flame shot from her wand onto the hem of Snape's robes. It took perhaps 30 seconds for Snape to realize that he was on fire. A sudden yelp told her she had done her job. Scooping the fire off him into a wolf jar in her pocket, she scrambled back along the row. Snape would never know what had happened. It was enough. Up in the air, Harry was suddenly able to clamber back on his broom. Neville, you can look, Ron said. Neville had been sobbing into Hagrid's jacket for the last 5 minutes. Harry was speeding toward the ground when the crowd saw him clap his hand to his mouth as though he was going to be sick. He hit the field on all fours, coughed, and something gold fell into his hand. I've got the snitch, he shouted, waving it above his head, and the game ended in a complete confusion. He didn't catch it. He nearly swallowed it. Flint was still howling 20 minutes later, but it made no difference. Harry hadn't broken any rules, and Lee Jordan was happily still shouting the results. Gryffindor had won by 170 points to 60. Harry hadn't heard none of this, though. He was being made a cup of strong black tea, a strong of cup of strong tea back in Hagrid's hut with Ron and Hermione. It was Snape, Ron was explaining. Hermione and I saw him. He was cursing your broomstick, muttering, "He wouldn't take his eyes off you." Rubbish, said Hagrid. What's up, Brad? Hope you're doing good this morning, my guy. Hey, I was up late and I seen you was streaming. I dropped the like, but I went to sleep like right after. Harry, Ron, and Hermione looked at each other. Rubbish. We wouldn't have had or heard a word of what had gone on next to him in the stands. Why would Snape try to do something like that? Harry, Ron, and Hermione looked at one another, wondering what to tell him. Harry decided on the truth. I found out something about him, he told Hagrid. He tried to get past that three-headed dog on Halloween. It bit him. We think he was trying to steal whatever it's guarding. Hagrid dropped the teapot. How do you know about Fluffy? Fluffy? Yeah, he's mine. Bottom of a Greek chappie I met in the pub last year. I let him to Dumbledore to guard the... Yes? Said Harry eagerly. Now, don't ask me any more, said Harry gruffly. That's top secret, that is. But Snape's trying to steal it. Rubbish, Snape said Hagrid again. Snape's a Hogwarts teacher. He'd do nothing of the sort. So why did he just try and kill Harry? Cried Hermione. The afternoon's events certainly seemed to have changed her mind about Snape. I know a jinx when I see one, Hagrid. I've read all about them. You've got to keep eye contact. And Snape wasn't blinking at all. I saw him. I'm telling you, you're wrong, said Hagrid hotly. I don't know why Harry's broom was acting like that, but Snape wouldn't try and kill a student. Now listen to me, all three of you. You're meddling things that don't concern you. It's dangerous. You forget that dog, and you forget what it's guarding. That's between Professor Dumbledore and Nicholas Flamel. Aha! Said Harry. So there's someone called Nicholas Flamel involved, is there? Hagrid looked furious with himself. All right, chat. That ends chapter 11. I have to use a quick potty break real quick. So just a quick intermission, and then we'll read chapter 12, The Mirror of Erised, which is another great chapter, by the way. And I shall return in about 2 minutes, chat. 2-minute intermission. Alright, chat. We are back with chapter 12. The Mirror of Earth's Head. Christmas was coming. One morning in mid-December, Hogwarts woke to find itself covered in several feet of snow. The lake froze. Damn, y'all. I went to go take a pee and y'all left. Ouch, that hurts. Hogwarts woke to find itself covered in several feet of snow. The lake froze solid, and the Weasley twins were punished for bewitching several snowballs so that they were followed Crow around, bouncing off the back of his turban. Alright, you know what, chat? Spoiler alert. If you haven't read, a book that's over 20 years old, Voldemort's on the back of his head. So Weasley twins were actually throwing snowballs at Voldemort. The few owls that managed to battle their way through the stormy sky to deliver mail had to be nursed back to health by Hagrid before they could fly off again. No one could wait for the holidays to start. While the Gryffindor common room was in the Great Hall and had roaring fires, the drafty quarters had become icy and a bitter wind rattled the windows in the classrooms. Worse of all were Professor Snape's classes down in the dungeons, where their breath rose in a mist before them, and they kept as close as possible to their hot cauldrons. I do feel so sorry, said Draco Malfoy one potions class. For all those people who have to stay at Hogwarts for Christmas, because they're not wanted at home. I can't do Malfoy's sneering voice as great as the actor. Damn. What's his name? Who plays Draco Malfoy in movies? Chat. Tom Felton. I can't do as good of an impression as Tom Felton. He was looking over at Harry as he spoke. Crabbe McGoyle chuckled. Harry, who was measuring out powdered spine of lionfish, ignored them. Malfoy had been even more unpleasant than usual since the Quidditch match. Disgusted that the Slytherins had lost, he tried to get everyone laughing at how a wide-mouthed tree frog would be replacing Harry as Seeker next. Then he realized that nobody found this funny. They were also impressed at the way Harry had managed to stay on his bucking broomstick. Again, bucking with the B, not an F. So Malfoy, jealous and angry, had gone back to taunting Harry about having no proper family. It was true that Harry wasn't going back to Privet Drive for Christmas. Professor McGonagall had come around the week before, making a list of students who would be staying for the holidays, and Harry had signed up at once. He didn't feel sorry for himself at all. This would probably be the best Christmas he'd ever have had. Ron and his brothers were saying it too, because Mr. and Mrs. Weasley were going through Romania, and his sister. To visit Charlie. When they left the dungeons at the end of the potions, they found a large fir tree blocking the corridor ahead. Fir, F-I-R. Fir tree. Blocking the corridor ahead. Two enormous feet, like Christmas trees, sticking out the bottom, and a loud puffing sound told them that Hagrid was behind it. Hi, Hagrid. Want any help? Ron asked, sticking his head through the branches. Nah, I'm all right. Thanks, Ron. Would you mind moving that out of the way? Came Malfoy's cold drawl from behind them. Are you trying to earn some extra money, Weasley? Hoping to be gamekeeper yourself when you leave Hogwarts, I suppose. That Hagrid must seem like a palace compared to what your family is used to. Ron dived at Malfoy just as Snape came up the stairs. Weasley! Weasley! Ron let go of the front Malfoy's ribs. It was provoked, Professor Snape, said Hagrid, sticking his huge hairy face out from behind the tree. Malfoy was insulting his family. Be that as it may, fighting as against Hogwarts rules, Hagrid, Snape said sulkily. 5 points from Gryffindor, Weasley, and be grateful as there isn't more. Move it on. Out of you. Malfoy, Crabbe, and Goyle pushed roughly past the tree, scattering needles everywhere and smirking. I'll get him, Ron said, grinding his teeth at Malfoy's back. One of these days I'll get him. I hate them both, said Harry, Malfoy, and Snape. Come on, cheer up. It's nearly Christmas, said Hagrid. Tell you what, come with me and see the Great Hall. Look, it's a treat. So the three of them followed Hagrid as his tree fell off to the Great Hall, where Professor McGonagall and Professor Flitwick were busy with the Christmas decorations. Hagrid, the last tree. Put it in the far corner, would you? I'm just assuming that was Professor McGonagall speaking. The hall looked spectacular. Festoons of holly and mistletoe hung all around the walls, and no less than 12 towering Christmas trees stood around the room, some sparkling with tiny icicles, some glittering with hundreds of candles. How many days you got left until your holidays? Hagrid asked. Just one, said Hermione. And that reminds me. Harry, Ron, we've got about half an hour before lunch. We should be in the library. Oh, yeah, you're right, said Ron, turning his eyes away from Professor Flitwick, who had golden bubbles blossoming out of his wand and was trailing them over the branches of the new tree. The library, said Hagrid, following them out of the hall. Just before the holidays. Bit keen, aren't you? Oh, we're not working, Harry told him brightly. Ever since you mentioned Nicholas Flamel, we've been trying to find out who he is. You what? Hagrid looked shocked. Listen here. Hey, don't worry, Holly. I work at 3:30 to 11:30. I didn't get home until 1 o'clock last night. Then I was locked out for a little bit. Listen here. I told you. Drop it. It's nothing to you with that dog's garden. We just want to know who Nicholas Flamel is, that's all, said Hermione. Unless you'd like to save us the trouble and tell us. Unless you'd like to tell us and save us the trouble. So strike that, reverse it. Harry added. We must have been through hundreds of books already, and we can't find him anymore. Just give us a hint. I know I've read his name somewhere. I'm saying nothing, said Hagrid flatly. Just have to find out for ourselves, then, said Ron, and they left Hagrid looking disgruntled and hurried off to the library. They had indeed been searching books with Flamel's name, ever since Hagrid had let it slip. Because how else were they going to find out what Snape was trying to steal? The trouble was, it was very hard to know where to begin, not knowing what Flamel might have done to get himself in a book. He wasn't in great wizards of the 20th century or notable magical names of our time. He was missing too from important modern magical discoveries and a study of recent developments in wizardry. And then, of course, there was the sheer size of the library. Tens of thousands of books, thousands of shelves, hundreds of narrow rows. Harry took out a list of subjects and titles she had decided to search, while Ron strode off a row of books and started pulling them off shelves at random. Harry wandered over to the restrictions section, restricted section. He had been wondering for a while if Flamel wasn't somewhere in there. Unfortunately, he needed a specifically signed note from one of the teachers to look in any of the restricted books, and he knew he'd never get one. These were the books containing powerful dark magic never taught at Hogwarts, and only read by older students studying advanced defense against the dark arts. "What are you looking for, boy?" "Nothing," said Harry. Madame Pince, the librarian, brandished a feathered duster at him. "You better get out of here, then. Go on! Out!" Wishing he'd been a bit quicker at thinking of some story, Harry left the library. He, Ron, and Hermione had already agreed that they'd better not ask Madame Pince where they could find Flamel. They were sure she'd be able to tell them, but they shouldn't risk Snape hearing what they were up to. Harry waited outside in the corridor to see if the other two hadn't found anything, but he wasn't very hopeful. They had been looking for 2 weeks, after all, but they had only had odd moments between lessons. It wasn't very surprising they'd found nothing. What they really needed was a long, nice search without Madame Pince breathing down their necks. 5 minutes later, Ron and Hermione joined him, shaking their heads. They went off to lunch. "You will keep looking while I'm away, won't you?" said Hermione. "And send me an owl if you find anything." "And you could ask your parents if they know who Flamel is," said Ron. "It'd be safe to ask them." "Very safe, as they're both dentists." "I hate dentists." "Lucky you, Amber," I raged. Once the holidays had started, Ron and Harry were having too good of a time to think much about Flamel. They had their dormitory to themselves, and the common room was far emptier than usual, so they were able to get the good armchairs by the fire. They sat by the hour eating anything they could spare on a toasting fork: bread, English muffins, marshmallows, and plotting ways of getting mouthful expelled, which were fun to talk about, even if they knew when it worked. Even if they wouldn't work. My American brain just added words in there. Ron also started teaching Harry wizard's chess. This was exactly like Muggle's chess, except the figures were alive, which made it a lot like directing troops into battle. Ron's set was very old and battered, like everything else he owned. It had once belonged to someone else in his family. In this case, his grandfather. However, all chessmen weren't a drawback at all. Ron knew them so well he never had trouble getting them to do whatever he wanted. Harry played with chessman Seamus Finnegan hadn't let him, and they didn't trust him at all. He wasn't a very good player yet, and they kept shouting different bits of advice at him, which was confusing. "Don't send me there. Can't you see his knight? Send him. We can't afford to lose him." That was kind of funny. On Christmas Eve, Harry went to bed looking forward to the next day for the food and the fun, but not expecting any presents at all. When he woke early in the morning, however, the first thing he saw was the small packages at the front of his bed, the foot of his bed. "Merry Christmas," said Ron as sleepily as Harry scrambled out of bed and pulled on his bathrobe. "You too. Will you look at this? I've got some presents." "What did you expect? Turnips?" said Ron, turning to his own pile, which was a lot bigger than Harry's. Harry picked up the top parcel. It was wrapped in a thick brown paper, and scrawled across it was "To Harry from Hagrid." Inside was a roughly cut wooden flute. Hagrid had obviously whittled it himself. Harry blew it. Sounded like a bit like an owl. A second, very small parcel contained a note. "We received your message and enclosed your Christmas present from Uncle Vernon and Aunt Petunia." Taped to the note was a 50 pence piece. Now you see, I think that's actually pretty cool that they in London or Britain or whatever that they have a 50-cent pieces. I don't really see those down here in Florida. Ron was fascinated by the 50 pence. Weird. What a shape. This is money? You can keep it, said Harry, laughing at how pleased Ron was. Hagrid and my aunt and uncle. So who sent these? I think I know who that one's from, said Ron, turning a bit pink and pointing to a very lumpy parcel. My mom. I told her you didn't expect any presents, Aunt. Oh no. She's made you a Weasley sweater. Harry had torn open the parcel to find a thick, hand-knitted sweater, an emerald green, and a large box of homemade fudge. Every year she makes us a sweater, said Ron, unwrapping his. Oh, and mine's always maroon. That's really nice of her, said Harry, trying the fudge, which was very tasty. His next present also contained candy, a large box of chocolate frogs from Hermione. Alright, just so y'all know, those chocolate frogs, if y'all get them from Universal, or if you can buy them online, when you get them, it's literally like a pound of chocolate. And there is no biting into that shit. I remember I had to take a sledgehammer, well, not a sledgehammer, but a regular hammer, to just break a piece off without breaking my teeth off. Just saying. Those chocolate frogs must be mad it's really soft too. Just saying. Just a little quick rant about chocolate frogs. This only left one parcel. Harry picked it up and felt it. It was very light. He unwrapped it. Something fluid and silvery gray went slithering to the floor, where it lay in gleaming folds. Ron gasped. I've heard of those, he said in a hushed voice, dropping the box of every flavored beans he'd gotten from Hermione. If that's what you think it is, they're really rare and really valuable. What is it? Harry picked up the shining silver cloth off the floor. It was strange to the touch, like water woven into material. It's an invisibility cloak, said Ron, a look of awe on his face. I'm sure it is. Try it on. Harry threw the cloak around his shoulders and Ron gave a yell. It is! Look down. Harry looked down at his feet, but they were gone. He dashed to the mirror. Sure enough, his reflection looked back at him, but just his head suspended in midair, his body completely invisible. He pulled the cloak over his head, and his reflection vanished completely. There's a note, Ron said, suddenly. A note fell out of it. Harry pulled off the cloak and seized the letter. Written in narrow, loopy writing he had never seen before was the following words. From you, Holly. Your father left it in my possession before he died. Shit, yeah. Alright, chat, so since we know this was from Dumbledore, your father left us in my possession before he died. It is time it is returned to you. Use it well. A very Merry Christmas to you. There was no signature. Harry stared at the note. Ron was admiring the cloak. I'd give anything for one of these, he said. Anything. What's the matter? Nothing, said Harry. He felt very strange. Who had sent him the cloak? Had it really once belonged to his father? Before he could say or think anything else, the dormitory door was flung open and Fred and George Weasley bounded in. Harry stuffed the cloak quietly out of sight. He didn't feel like sharing it with anyone else yet. Merry Christmas! Hey, look! Harry's got a Weasley sweater, too. Fred and George were wearing blue sweaters. One with a large yellow F on it, The other a G. Harry's is better than ours, though, said Harry, holding up Harry's sweater. She obviously makes more of an effort if you're not family. Why aren't you wearing yours, Ron? George demanded. Emma, get it on. So lovely and warm. I hate maroon, Ron moaned half-heartedly as he pulled it over his head. You haven't got a letter on yours, George observed. Especially since you don't forget your name. But we're not stupid. We know we're called Gred and Forge. What's all this noise? Percy Weasley stuck his head through the door, looking disapproving. Oh, fuck off, Percy. He had clearly gotten halfway through unwrapping his presents, too, as he, too, carried a lumpy sweater over his arm, which Fred seized. P for prefect. Get it, Percy? Emma, we're all wearing ours. Even Harry got one. I don't want, said Percy thickly, as the twins forced the sweater over his head, knocking his glasses askew. You're not sitting with a perfect prefix today either, said George. Christmas is a time for family. They frog marched Percy from the room, his arms pinned to his side by his sweater. Harry had never in all of his life had such a Christmas dinner. 100 fat roast turkeys, mountains of roast and boiled peanuts, platters of chipolatas, I'm not sure, tureens of buttered peas, silver boats of thick, rich gravy, and cranberry sauce. Blech. I'm sorry, Jack. Cranberry sauce is nasty. Cranberry sauce needs to be just removed from existence. Cranberries in general need to be removed from existence in general. Blech. 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 I'm sorry, cranberry sauces. Ugh. And stacks of wizard crackers every few feet along the table. These fantastic party favors were nothing like the feeble muggle ones the Dursleys usually bought, with their little plastic toys and their flimsy paper hats inside. Harry pulled a wizard's cracker with Fred, and then it didn't just bang. It went off with a blast like a cannon and engulfed them in a loud cloud of blue smoke. While from the outside exploded a rear admiral's hat and several live white mouths. Up at the high table, Dumbledore had swapped his pointed wizard's hat for a flowered bonnet and was chuckling merrily at a joke Professor Flitwick had just read to him. Flaming Christmas puddings followed the turkey. Percy had nearly broken his tooth on a silver sickle embedded in his slice. Ooh, nice. Yeah, I agree. Clearly just from my small rant. Sorry, chat. I didn't mean to laugh. That was funny though, Holly. Watched Hagrid getting redder and redder in the face as he called for more wine. More wine! Reminds me of Thor from the first Thor movie. More! Another! Finally, kissing Professor McGonagall on the cheek, who, to Harry's amazement, giggled and blushed. Her top hat lopsided. What? When Harry finally left the table, he was laden down with a stack of things out of the crackers, including a pack of non-explodable luminous balloons, a grown your own warts kit, and his own wizard's chess set. Nice. What page are we on, Teacher Dave? LOL. We are on page 204. The white mice had disappeared, and Harry had a nasty feeling they are going to end up as Mrs. Norris's Christmas dinner. Harry and the Weasleys spent a happy afternoon having a furious snowball fight on the grounds. Then, cold, wet, and gasping for breath, they returned to the fire in the Gryffindor common room, where Harry broke his new chess set by losing spectacularly to Ron. He suspected he wouldn't have lost so badly if Percy hadn't tried to help him so much. After a meal of turkey sandwiches, crumpets, trifle, and a Christmas cake, everyone felt too full and sleepy to do much before bed, except sit and watch Percy chase Fred and George all over Gryffindor Tower, because they'd stolen his prefect badge. It had been Harry's best Christmas day ever. Yet something had been nagging at the back of his mind all day. Not until he climbed into his bed was he free to think about it. The invisibility cloak, and whoever had sent it. Ron, full of turkey and cake and with nothing mysterious to bother him, fell asleep almost as soon as he drawn the curtains of his four-poster. Harry leaned over the side of his own bed and pulled the cloak out from under it. His father's. This had been his father's. He let the material flow over his hands, smoother than silk, light as air. Use it well, the note had said. He had to try it now. He slipped out of bed, and wrapped the cloak around himself. Looking down at his legs, he saw only his moonlight and shadows. It was a very funny feeling. Shout out to the two. Use it well. Suddenly, Harry felt wide awake. The whole of Hogwarts was open to him in his cloak. Excitement flooded through him as he stood in the dark and silence. He could go anywhere, and Filch would never know. Ron grunted in his sleep. Should Harry wake him? Something held him back. His father's cloak. He felt that this time, the first time, he wanted to use it alone. He crept out of the dormitory, down the stairs, across the common room, and climbed through the portrait hole. Who's there? Squawked the fat lady. Harry said nothing. He walked quickly down the corridor. Where should he go? He stopped, his heart racing, and thought, and then it came to him. The restricted section in the library. You'd be able to read as long as you liked, as long as it took to find out who Flamel was. He set off, drawing the invisibility cloak tight around him as he walked. The library was pitch black and very eerie. Harry lit a lamp to see his way along the row of books. The lamp looked as if it was floating along in midair. Even though Harry could feel his arm supporting it, the sight gave him creeps. Okay, why wouldn't you use the lantern underneath the invisibility cloak, Harry? Because look, y'all have just a lantern just floating through midair. That's not suspicious at all. What if Peeves came along? Just saying. The library was pitch black and very eerie. Harry lit a lamp to see his way along the row of books. The lamp looked as if it was floating in midair, and even the restriction section was right at the back of the library. Stepping carefully over the rope that separated these books from the rest of the library, he held up his lamp. Yeah, no, I hear you, Holly. I hear you, I guess. Well, look, because he can still see in front of him if he's holding underneath. Well, I'm just saying, the fact that a lantern is just floating in midair, that's not creepy at all. Uh-huh. Okay. Stepping carefully over the road that separated these books from the rest of the library, he held up his lamp to read the titles. They didn't tell him much. The repealing, faded gold letters spelled words in languages Harry couldn't understand. Some had no title at all. One book had a dark stain on it that looked horribly like blood. The hairs on Harry's neck prickled. Maybe he was imagining it, maybe not, but he thought a faint whispering was coming from the books, as though they knew someone was there who shouldn't be. He had to start somewhere. Setting the lamp down carefully on the floor, he looked along the bottom shelf for an interesting looking book. A large black and silver volume caught his eye. He pulled it out with difficulty because it was very heavy, and, balancing it on his knee, let it fall open. A piercing, blood-curdling shriek split the silence. The book was screaming! Harry snapped it shut, but the shriek went on and on. One high, unbroken, ear-splitting note. Facts, Ollie, facts. He stumbled backward and knocked over his lamp, which went out at once. Panicking, he heard footsteps coming down the corridor outside. Stuffing the shrieking book back on the shelf, he ran for it. He passed Filch in the doorway. Filch's pale, wild eyes looked straight through him, and Harry slipped under Filch's outstretched arm and shrieked up the corridor. The book's shriek still a sudden halt in front of a tall suit of armor. He had been so busy getting away from the library, he hadn't paid attention to where he was going. Perhaps because it was so dark, he didn't recognize where he was at all. There was a suit of armor near the kitchens, he knew, but he must be 5 floors above there. You asked me to come directly to you, Professor. If anyone was wandering around at night, and someone's been in the library. Restricted section? Harry felt the blood drain out of his face. Wherever he was, Filch must have known a shortcut. His soft, greasy voice was getting nearer to his horror. It was Snape who replied. The restriction section? Well, they can't be far. We'll catch them. Harry stood rooted to his spot as Filch and Snape came around the corner ahead. They couldn't see him, of course, but it was a narrow corridor, and if they came much nearer, they'd knock right into him. The cloak didn't stop him from being solid. He backed away as quietly as he could. You know how I like Snape? But Snape is still a dick. He's like one of the biggest dicks there are in the complete series. They couldn't see him, of course, but it was still a narrow corridor, and if they came much nearer, they'd knock right into him. The cloak didn't stop him from being solid. He backed away as quietly as he could. A door stood ajar to his left. It was his only hope. He squeezed through it, holding his breath, trying not to move. What is your reason, Holly? I'm interested. Or do I have to get to a certain book for you to reveal that information? They walked straight past, and Harry leaned against the wall, breathing deeply, listening to their footsteps dying away. Well, that had been close, very close. It was a few seconds before he noticed anything about the room he had hidden in. It looked like an unused classroom. The dark shapes of desks and chairs were piled against the walls, and there was an upturned waste paper basket. But, propped against the wall facing him, was something that didn't look as if it belonged there. Something that looked as if someone had just put it there, just to keep it out of the way. It was a magnificent mirror, as high as the ceiling, with an ornate gold frame, standing on two clawed feet. There was an inscription carved around the top. Erested stora iheru ut ube kafru ut washi. His panic fading now that there was no sound of Filch and Snape, Harry moved nearer to the mirror, wanted to look himself, but seeing no reflection again. He stepped in front of it. He had to clap his hands to his mouth to stop him from screaming. He whirled around. His heart was pounding far more fiercely than the book had screamed, for he had not seen only himself in the mirror, but a whole crowd of people standing right behind him. But the room was empty. Breathing very fast, he turned slowly back to the mirror. There he was, reflected in it, white and scared looking, and there, reflected behind him, was at least 10 others. Harry looked over his shoulder, but still no one was there. He basically just wants the best for Harry, and really in the long run he tries to help. And he was in love with Harry's mom, and Harry has her eyes, so he sees Lily every time he looks at her, and he can't stand it. It's still no reason to be a dick to every student ever. I mean, he's a dick to all Gryffindors. He's a dick to Neville. He's a dick to, I'm sure, Hufflepuffs and Ravenclaws, too. I mean, come on, man. Just because, just because he was in love with the kid's mom. I get that. But still, there's no reason to be a dick to everybody for all time and eternity. Just saying. Was he, in fact, in a room full of invisible people? And this mirror's trick was that it reflected them, invisible or not? He looked in the mirror again. A woman, standing right behind his reflection, was smiling at him and waving. He reached out a hand and felt the air behind him. And if she was really there, he touched her. Their reflections were so close together, but he only felt air. She and the others existed only in the mirror. It's just Snape. Makes the movie. Yeah, I know it does. I know it makes the movie. The very final movie, but yeah. And the very last book. She was a very pretty woman. She had dark red hair in her eyes. Her eyes were just like mine, I thought, edging a little closer to the glass. Bright green. Exactly the same shape. But then he noticed that she was crying. Smiling, but crying at the same time. The tall, thin, black-haired man standing next to her put his arm around her. He wore glasses, and his hair was very untidy. It stuck up at the back, just as Harry's did. He's a dark person, and that's why he worked for the Dark Lord. And yeah, it surprised me that he never knew that he was on both sides. Yeah, right. Facts. Harry was so close to the mirror that his nose was nearly touching that reflection. Mom? He whispered. Dad? They looked at him, smiling. And slowly, Harry looked into the faces of other people in the mirror and saw other pairs of green eyes like his, other noses like his, even a little old man who looked as if he had Harry's knobbly knees. Harry was looking at his family for the first time in his life. The Potters smiled and waved at Harry, and he stared hungrily back at them. His hands pressed flat against the glass, as though he was hoping to fall right through and reach them. He had a powerful kind of ache inside of him, half joy, half terrible sadness. How long he stood there, he didn't know. The reflections did not fade, and he looked until a distant noise brought him back to his senses. He couldn't stay here. He had to find his way back to bed. He tore his eyes away from his mother's face, whispered, "I'll come back," and hurried from the room. "You could have woken me up," said Ron crossly. "You can come tonight. I'm going back. I want to show you the mirror. I'd like to see you, Mom and Dad." "Oh, I want to see all your family, all the Weasleys. You'll be able to show me your brothers and everyone." "You can see them any old time," said Ron. "Just come around my house this summer. Anyway, maybe it only shows dead people. Shame about not finding Flamel, though. Have some bacon or something. Why aren't you eating anything?" Harry couldn't eat. He had seen his parents and would be seeing them again tonight. He had almost forgotten about Flamel. It didn't seem very important anymore. Who cared about the three-headed dog's garden? What did it matter if Snoop stole it, really? "Are you all right? You look odd," said Ron. What Ron feared most was that what Harry feared most was that he might not be able to find the mirror room again. With Ron covered in the cloak, too, they had to walk much more slowly the next night. They tried retracing Harry's route from the library, wandering the dark passageways for nearly an hour. "I'm freezing. Let's forget it and go back." uh, when does Snake wear pink? "No," hissed Harry. "I know it's around here somewhere." They passed the ghost of a tall witch gliding in the opposite direction, but saw no one else. Just as Ron started moaning that his feet were dead cold, Harry spotted a suit of armor. "Oh, huh. Well, who wears pink?" Huh. Oh, okay. Now I remember who you're talking about. The one who looks like a toad. Ahem. Oh, I can't wait till we get to the fifth book. Hmm. "It's here. Just here. Yes." They pushed the door open. Harry dropped the cloak. Yeah, now I know. They pushed the door open. Harry dropped the cloak from around here. "Wait, so you like Umbridge? You're a fan of her, huh?" Harry dropped the cloak from around his shoulders and ran to the mirror. There they were, his mother and father beamed at the sight of him. "See?" Harry whispered. "I can't see anything." Look at them all. There are loads of them. I can only see you. Look at it properly. Go on. Stand where I am." Harry stepped aside. But with Ron in front of the mirror, he couldn't see his family anymore. Just Ron in his paisley pajamas. Ron, though, was staring transfixed at his image. "Look at me," he said. "Can you see all your family standing around you?" "Ah, you don't like her at all, huh?" "Me neither." "No, I'm alone. But I'm different. I look older. And I'm head boy." "What?" "I am. I'm wearing the badge like Bill used to. And I'm holding the Quidditch cup, house cup. And the Quidditch cup." I'm Quidditch captain too. Ron tore his eyes away from the splendid sight to look excitedly at Harry. Do you think this mirror shows the future? How can it? All my family are dead. Let me have another look. You had it to yourself all last night. Give me a bit more time. You're only holding the Quidditch cup. What's important about that? I want interesting about that. I want to see my parents. Don't push me. A sudden noise outside in the corridor put an end to their discussion. They hadn't realized how loudly they had been talking. Quick! Ron threw the cloak back over them as the luminous eyes of Mrs. Norrez came round the door. Ron and Harry stood quite still, both thinking the same thing. Did the cloak work on cats? After what seemed an age, she turned and left. This isn't safe. She might have gone for Filch. I bet she heard us. Come on. And Ron pulled Harry out of the room. The snow still hadn't melted the next morning. Want to play chess, Harry? Said Ron. No. Why don't we go down and visit Harry? Hagrid. No, you go. I know what you're thinking about, Harry. The mirror. Don't go back tonight. Why not? I don't know. I've just got a bad feeling about it. And anyways, you've had too many close shaves already. Filch, Snape, and Mrs. Norris all are wandering around. So what if they can't see you? What if they walk into you? What if you knock something over? You sound like Hermione. I'm serious, Harry. Don't go. But Harry had only had one thought in his head, which was to get back in front of the mirror, and Ron wasn't going to stop him. That third night, he found his way more quickly than before. He was walking so fast he knew he was making more noise than was wise, but he didn't meet anyone. And there was his mother and father smiling at him again, and one of his grandfathers nodding happily. Harry sank down to sit on the floor in front of the mirror. There was nothing to stop him from staying here all night with his family. Nothing at all, except, so, fuck again, Harry. Harry felt as though his insides had just turned to ice. He looked behind him. Sitting on one of the desks behind the wall was none other than Albus Dumbledore. Harry must have walked straight past him, so desperate to get to the mirror he hadn't noticed him. I didn't see you, sir. Strange how nearsighted being invisible can make you, said Dumbledore. And Harry was relieved to see that he was smiling. So, said Dumbledore, slipping off the desk to sit on the floor with Harry. You, like hundreds before you, have discovered the delights of the Mirror of Erised. I didn't know it was called Desert, but I expect you've realized by now what it does. It shows me my family. And it showed you your friend Ron that himself as head boy. How did you know? I don't need a cloak to become invisible, said Dumbledore gently. Okay, now let's just pause on that. How, Dumbledore? How do you not need a cloak to become invisible? Like, what did you do? Cast a spell to, like, camouflage yourself? I'm sorry, just that line just didn't make sense to me. Now, can you think of what the Mirror of Erised shows us at all? Shows us all. Harry shook his head. Let me explain. The happiest man on earth would be able to use the Mirror of Erised like a normal mirror. That is, he would look into it and see himself exactly as he is. Does that help? Harry thought, and then he said slowly, it shows us what we want, whatever we want. Yes and no. It shows us nothing more or less than the deepest, most desperate desire of our hearts. You, who have never known your family, see them standing around you. Ronald Weasley, who has always been overshadowed by his brothers. see himself standing alone, the best of all of them. However, this mirror will give us neither knowledge or truth. Men have wasted away before it, entranced by what they have seen, or have been driven mad, not knowing if what it shows is real or even possible. The mirror will be moved to a new home tomorrow, Harry, and I ask you not to go looking for it again. If you ever do run across it, you will now be prepared. It does not do to dwell on drinks and forget to live. Remember that. Now, why don't you put that admirable cloak back on and get back off to bed? Get off to bed. Harry stood up. Sir, Professor Dumbledore, can I ask you something? Obviously, you've just done so. Dumbledore smiled. You may ask me one more thing, however. What do you see when you look in the mirror? I? I see myself holding a pair of thick woolen socks. Harry stared. One can never have enough socks. I can second that, said Dumbledore. Another Christmas has gone and gone, and I didn't get a single pair. People insist on giving me books. It was only when he was back in bed that it struck Harry that Dumbledore might not have been quite truthful. But then, he thought, as he shoved Scabbers off his pillow, it had been quite a personal question. Alright, chat, and that concludes chapter 12. Our next chapter read will be not tomorrow, taking tomorrow off, and then the next day, so Tuesday. Tuesday will be the next chapter read. Yeah. And we'll be reading chapter 13 and actually we'll read 13 and 14 on Tuesday. Yep, I'm back to Holly. And I will see you guys in the next one. See you guys Tuesday. Daves-Raves out. Peace.